Now, a day after China halted its short-term visas for South Koreans and Japanese travelers, this after Japan imposed COVID-19 curbs on visitors from China. Japan has now launched a protest over the suspension of visas and asked China to overturn the action. The Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan has said that it is regrettable that China has unilaterally taken visa suspension actions for reasons other than the steps for coronavirus.
我が国としては中国において新型コロナの感染状況が急速に悪化するとともに詳細な状況の把握が困難であることを踏まえ新型コロナの国内への流入の急増を避けるため昨年12月30日以降入国時検査や陰性証明書の提出などの臨時的な措置を講じているところであります。
China's move to suspend the short-term visas comes after Japan introduced COVID-19 border control rules for travelers coming directly from China. They will now require a negative PCR test result less than 72 hours before departure. South Korea, meanwhile, has said that its country's decision was based on scientific evidence and emphasized on how the COVID-19 positivity rate of the inbound travelers from China had decreased since it toughened quarantine measures for arrivals from Beijing.
현재 중국 내에서는 코로나 상황이 악화되고 있는 것으로 저희가 알고 있고 이런 이제 대규모 환자 발생에 따른 신규 변이 우려 등 이런 상황들이 이제 저희는 고려해야 된다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 또 최근에 통계 발표를 이제 중단을 하면서 감염 상황에 대해서 저희가 이제 알 수 없는 그런 이제 불투명성으로 인해서 우리는 이제 중국에 가장 인접해 있는 국가.
Meanwhile, China has defended its retaliatory measures against South Korea and Japan and has called the curbs reasonable. The Chinese embassies in Seoul and Tokyo also slammed the testing requirement as discriminatory. The state-run nationalist tabloid Global Times also defended Beijing's retaliation as a direct and reasonable response to protect its own legitimate interests. Jean-Pierre Cabeston is Emeritus Professor of Political Science Department of Government and International Studies at the Hong Kong Baptist University. Jean-Pierre, welcome to the program. What do you make of China's move of suspending short-term visas to South Koreans and Japanese citizens? Japan says the decision is one-sided. China says the curbs are reasonable. What's happening here?
Well, I have difficulties understanding the Chinese government's position on this issue. For many years, 3 years, most visitors have been banned from entering China because of the COVID crisis. When traveling to other countries, we've been compelled to get PCR tests to travel to many countries around the world. And now we have a surge of cases, COVID cases in China. So to me, it's very natural and very logical that other countries want to protect themselves against a new wave of COVID-19 pandemic or cases. And I think it's hard to understand why China singles out Japan and South Korea, why they haven't, taken the same kind of retaliation measures against European nations, which have imposed the same kind of restrictions to visitors. It doesn't mean that Chinese visitors cannot go to these countries. It means just they have to submit themselves to PCR tests, which is a very standard type of precaution taken by a number of countries around the world. So I think there is maybe another objective here, which is to put pressure on its neighbors and remind Japan and South Korea who is the boss in East Asia. But it doesn't give a good image of China in the region and around the world.
Jean-Pierre, the Chinese embassies in Seoul and Tokyo also slammed the testing requirement as discriminatory. What needs to happen now to avoid this from exploding into a diplomatic spat between these neighbors?
I think it's up to China to change its mind, to change its view on this issue. I don't think that Japan or South Korea are going to back off. What I can see is more countries are going to take precautionary measures. So the kind of retaliation made by China makes less and less sense in my view. But we'll see how it goes. I don't see how, again, Japan or South Korea can compromise on that. It's a very standard measure, which has been taken by many governments around the world. So for quite a long time, actually, we've just started to lift this restriction, and I would add to that even for mainland Chinese coming to Hong Kong, they need to have a PCR test as well. So I mean, that's something which is not restricted to Japan and South Korea.
Jean-Pierre Cabeston, thank you very much for talking to WION today.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.